When my income was at its absolute highest, I was making over $100,000 a month. And in January of 2022, I brought in $111,599.58. But if you fast forward just 1 year from then, I was hardly making that amount for the entire year. In 2023, my income had dropped by almost $400,000, and I found myself in over $247,000 worth of debt and owed taxes. I almost lost my house, and I almost considered getting a regular 9-to-5 job. So the question is, what on earth happened? Well, if we rewind to December of 2021, I had crossed my first $1 million. I was 32 years old and I missed my initial goal by 2 years. I wanted to reach it by the time I was 30. And if you're wondering what I do, I run a branding agency and it's one of the top in the country. And we primarily focus on branding and website design. I didn't go to school for this. I was never taught how to do it. I'm fully self-educated. And I really fell in love with marketing before I knew it was marketing. I fell in love with entrepreneurship before I knew what entrepreneurship was. And that really all happened in high school. In high school, I took art class and photography class and graphic design and computer programming, and I loved art and music. Back then, I was actually designing MySpace layouts for my friends that were in bands. I would design their album cover, their t-shirt design, their tour poster, and their MySpace layouts. And I loved it. At the time, I was freelancing, and I didn't even know what freelancing was, but I was going out and taking pictures for bands and designing their brand and all of their stuff. It's really a shame because I didn't know that that was what I was doing, and I could have gotten a huge head start on my career, but that's not what happened. After high school, I kind of lost my way, as many of us do, and I started staying up late and partying and chasing girls and more significantly, getting in trouble. I was constantly in and out of jail and court and was just always behind on like speeding tickets and fines and getting in fights all the time. Like me and my best friend, we lived together and I was getting in fights all the time. And so between the ages of like 18 and 24, I was a complete idiot. I was totally lost and I was headed down not a great path. Everything changed in 2014. I was 24 years old and I was a bartender. So through that jungle of a time, I discovered bartending and it was really the only job that I could keep. I was fired from every single job that I ever had, literally. Even the bartending gig I was eventually fired from. When I was frustrated with that, combined with a lot of other things that happened during that time period, which in reality, I will cover my story in a different video, how I got started and my rise to success and the many failures along the way. That can be a topic for another video. And shortly after that was when I rediscovered this idea of marketing, which is really just the combination of art and technology. That's really all that marketing is. That was when I dove completely headfirst into entrepreneurship and trying to build a life for myself. So now that you have some background, let's fast forward back to January of 2022. I'm making over $100,000 that month. And on the surface, everything is perfect. I had accomplished everything that I had ever dreamed of. I bought a $120,000 sports car. I was traveling the world. I'm speaking on stage with my heroes at that time. Maybe not so much anymore, but I was writing for Forbes, I was writing for Entrepreneur Magazine. I became a self-published author at the age of 28 and selling my book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I was in a relationship at that time, which had lasted over 8 years. And my friends and family all felt that I had the perfect life and that I had picked myself up from the depths of hell and somehow made my life into a success, which in many ways is very, very true. But simultaneously, what I haven't told you is that in that moment, especially at the beginning of 2022, my entire life was completely crumbling beneath me. I can honestly say that at that point in time, in my entire life, I had never, ever experienced depression. I had never had a panic attack. I never worried about anything. I just stiff-armed my way through life. I had the biggest ego that you could ever imagine, especially after finding all that success. In many ways, it proved to me that my delusion was true. and that I could do anything that I set my mind to, which isn't a bad belief to have. But unfortunately, I was neglecting some of the most important things in my life at that time. I fell into depression because months prior to that glorious month where I'm making 111 something thousand dollars, my relationship that I mentioned had come to an end. And it was an amicable split, but it did blindside me and it just crushed my entire belief system. And I have never felt as big of a failure as I did from letting my relationship fail. You know, when you're with somebody for 8, 9 years, it's essentially a marriage. You know this person better than anybody, and they knew me better than anybody has ever known me. And to lose that is devastating. If you've experienced anything like that, you obviously know what I mean. There's so many other things that can set us off course in life, but I was not prepared for that, and I didn't know it was coming. And that was September of 2021. And when you're with someone for that long, it's not an overnight breakup. You know, this is a months-long process, multiple months. And so as I rolled into 2022, I'm making more money than I ever had. But behind the scenes, my life is in turmoil. And all the things that were important to me were gone. And all of the surface material items that seemed important had no value. There's this quote of, "I'd rather cry in my Ferrari than my Toyota Camry." The reality is that that sounds funny and it sounds like, oh yeah, I could get behind that, until you really are in that situation and you really are that person. Now, metaphorically crying in my metaphorical Ferrari, but I never experienced such a low in my lifetime, or not in my adult life. In the preceding months, and unfortunately years, my life kind of fell apart. So starting from the beginning of 2022, I took my foot off the gas with my business. I started sleeping in and neglecting my finances, going out to eat all the time because I didn't want to go grocery shopping or cook for myself. I started drinking, I started doing drugs, I started doing cocaine and eating mushrooms and staying up insanely late and just going out all the time and numbing myself to avoid what was happening in my life. It was devastating. And the damage that it did to me financially was severe. I stopped paying my quarterly taxes, which is a huge part of this problem. And I just started spending. Retail therapy is a real thing. And money had never been a problem because I was making at minimum tens of thousands of dollars every month. So I just started spending and buying things because why not, right? It made me feel better. And that was what I did to try to get through the pain that I was suppressing. No one in my life knew that my relationship had even ended. So externally, it seemed like everything was fine and was just carrying on as normal, right? Life is good, money's good, I'm buying things, I'm having a good time, making money, doing whatever I wanted. And really, what was happening within the walls of my home was that my life was imploding. That is where this financial disaster really begins. Okay, so let's get into some cold hard numbers so that you have a foundation for where this story really begins. So here's a breakdown of my debt. $27,481 in personal credit card debt, $35,812 in business credit card debt, $58,992 in personal loan debt, $82,568 in unpaid federal taxes, $16,207 in unpaid state taxes, and a $27,000 Stripe Capital loan. That brings the total to $247,062.87 in debt. $250,000 in debt. So you might be wondering, well, how could it possibly have gotten that bad without me noticing? Sometimes I wonder myself, but the reality is that I always felt like this was a problem for future me. Hindsight is 20/20. But the reality is that when you're making money like that, carrying balances like this and having loans and, credit lines and stuff is fairly normal. Just one of my Amex cards had a credit limit of $100,000. So carrying a $10,000 or $15,000 credit balance is really not that crazy. But when I started to neglect my business and stop caring about anything, including myself and my health, my life became very narrow and nothing really mattered So paying my taxes every quarter didn't matter because I was questioning why I even existed. I had neglected so many things in my life, and for 8 years, I basically was just obsessed with making money and finding success and, buying material things and essentially buying all the things that I never had growing up. And so I bought the fancy sports car and I bought the nice house and I traveled the world and did all the things and bought the Gucci belts and the expensive shoes and all that shit. And I didn't follow any of the advice that we hear when we're kids, such as only spend what you earn or spend less than you earn or stick to a budget, buy assets, not liabilities, start investing early and create an emergency fund and avoid high interest debt. I didn't do any of these things. And of course, that's a recipe for disaster. And I just always felt that it was a problem I would deal with later. I didn't ever predict that my life would kind of fall apart in the way that it did and that my business would ever not be a priority. Because very quickly, I found myself literally sitting in this house every day, having no idea what I was doing. I would just sit here and think, what happened? And I would just literally stare at the wall all day. I was just frozen, like analysis paralysis. And I am a hardcore perfectionist. That's a topic for another day. But my genuine thought was that I knew I would make millions of dollars in my lifetime. And I knew that because I had proved to myself that I could do it. So I knew moving forward, if I could do it once, I could do it again. And because of that, it allowed me to push this problem away and think, okay, this is something for future Myke to deal with. Well, it turns out that that was not the case. So as 2022 carried on, I continued racking up debt and neglecting my business. Now, I was paying people's salaries. I was paying tens of thousands of dollars in expenses and subscriptions to softwares that I needed to run my business. And I was hoping that my accountant would just take care of everything. And of course, they didn't. That's not necessarily their responsibility, right? It's my responsibility to have an eye on my business and my finances, and I didn't. And I let that carry all the way through 2023. And it wasn't until the holidays of 2023, almost 24 months later, before I really thought to myself, okay, I need to sit down, look at my budget, look at my finances, and see what's going on. And this might sound crazy, but I mean, I would go months without even looking at my bank account. Didn't even need to, didn't need to check it. I just always knew there was money there. I probably checked my bank account maybe 2 or 3 times in an entire year. Yeah, that's negligence for sure. During the holidays of 2023, I knew in the back of my mind, okay, I need to get focused and I need to get my life back and I need to get things back together. I was genuinely tired of like partying and being up late. And so I thought to myself, okay, for the holidays of 2023, I'm not gonna drink because I know I need to get focused. And I was so frustrated with how my years had gone. I could not believe that 2 years had gone by since my breakup and I was still somehow lost and wallowing around and stuck underneath this like dark cloud. I promised myself, I said, there is no way that I'm going to have another year like this. As the holidays came up, I knew that I had to look at my finances and figure out what was going on. So I figured that I probably had owed, 50, 60, maybe 80 grand or something like that in, taxes and bills and credit cards and stuff. So I sat down to assess the damage, and now, of course, you know that it was much, much worse than that. And when I tallied it all up, I was mind blown. And in that moment, I thought, wow, I am fucked. Like, I am royally screwed. And I had no idea what to do. So throughout the holidays, I was very stressed out and truly just like frozen. I had no idea what I was gonna do. And for the first time, I was coming to the realization that I was gonna have to sell all the things that I had worked so hard for. I was gonna have to sell my car. I was gonna have to sell my house. I was gonna have to sell everything I owned, basically, in order to get out of this hole that I had dug and that I had put myself in. And I felt like so stupid because anybody has like heard this basic advice and I just didn't follow it. And so me, thinking I was so clever and so smart and able to get out of any situation because I always had before and able to make so much money for myself, I found myself in the opposite situation, which was I really didn't have an answer and I had no idea what I was gonna do. So I did what any responsible adult would do, and I got home from the holidays and That night, I decided to eat a big bag of mushrooms, right? What any responsible adult would do. I love mushrooms, and I went on a little journey for myself, and that was my way of escaping the reality, you know? That was my way of not, again, finding a way to escape responsibility and not being able to deal with the situation that was in front of me. Now, the next morning when I woke up, there was a sticky note on my countertop, and it said, "Listen to voice note." And that's what I did. So I got my phone and listened to the voice note that I had made the night prior along my mushroom trip. And I like to get creative with mushrooms. It's something that I just do on my own. Now, I haven't done them in over a year at this point, but I like to journal and draw and read, and maybe not read, but I like to get creative, and I do. I take a lot of notes and stuff like that. I have books all over my house. There's books in my bathroom, there's books everywhere. And I was in my office listening to music, and this book was on the floor. And at the time, I had not read it, and it's called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And it was sitting on the floor, and I was tripping, listening to music, and I was looking at the book, and looking at the title, Obstacle is the Way. And I thought to myself, like, obstacle is the way? Like, what the hell does that mean? Obstacle is the way. How in the world is the obstacle the way? And I was thinking about my obstacle, which is I let my life fall apart. I'm in huge debt, and I have no idea who I am or what I'm doing or what I care about or what my purpose is or what I'm even doing here. How can that obstacle be the way? Like, how is there a solution within that obstacle? So I love philosophy and I love history. And I hopped on my computer and I kind of just did some research, and I was Googling, obstacle is the way. And Ryan Holiday is a Stoic writer, and I love Stoic philosophy. I came across a related message, which is your mess is your message. Throughout that evening, that was just stuck in my head, like the obstacle is the way. Your mess is your message. As I thought through that, I made a voice note in my phone. And I do remember that, but I didn't know every single, detail to it. And yeah, the details were a little bit fuzzy. And I often make notes to reference, the next day, regardless of mushrooms. I often wake up in the middle of the night with crazy ideas and put them in my phone or, whatever. The next morning, I listened to the voice note, and it's essentially this idea of taking this problem and putting it out there for the world to see, stating that I was in $250,000 worth of debt and that I was gonna try and figure out how the hell to crawl out of that situation. Now, as I considered doing this and I started to think about how this obstacle could be a path for me to get out of it, I fought against my normal nature of being a perfectionist. I struggle with that a lot, and it causes me to procrastinate and not take action on things. And so I thought to myself, I really don't have the time or the leisure to be able to postpone acting on something. I have to figure something out immediately. So what I decided to do was actually just film the video, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna post it yet, but I just wanted to make the statement so that I could look at it and really contemplate, do I wanna post something like this? In January of 2022, I was making over $111,000 per month. But over the past 2 years, I have let it all crash and burn in pretty spectacular fashion. I am now in $221,062.87 in debt, and on the verge of losing just about everything. But here's why this is great news for you. If you rewind a bit, in 2021, I had made $1.7 million at age 32. I was writing for Forbes. I was traveling, speaking on stage, autographing copies of my book, and signing brand deals left and right. I had over 250,000 followers on social media and was getting millions of views and likes on my videos. And I had built an email list of over 20,000 subscribers. I was literally bringing in money and new clients in my sleep. I was happy, healthy, had great relationships, and had what was the dream life. But all of that has since come to an end, and I have no choice but to completely start over. See, the worst part about making a lot of money is then you owe a lot of money in taxes. Combine that with some huge credit lines, a couple loans, a crushing depression, and basically just wanting to give up on everything. And that equals a total disaster, which is what has unfolded. But it's never too late to start over. And who knows, I might lose my house in this process. That is a reality that I face.
But a wise man once said, your mess is your message. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be sharing my mess with you and showing you how I'm going to get out of this situation in hopes that it helps you and gives you some ideas this year. Without a doubt, this will be very hard, but I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes and showing you every step along the way. In my upcoming posts, I'll tell you more about what happened, but more importantly, I'll be breaking down my finances, giving you an inside look at how I'm going to start over and showing you exactly what my plan is. So if you want to see how a 30-something-year-old millionaire would start over and rebuild their life and their wealth from day one, be sure to follow this account. Turn on your post notifications so that you can follow along on this journey with me. And as a side note, this is a very uncomfortable thing for me to do, so I genuinely appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you a ton of success in 2024. Cheers.
So after I made that video, I decided to send it to a couple close friends. Nobody knew about this, so no one knew that this was going on in my life. This was a very private thing that I was ashamed of. I wanted to get feedback because it was hard for me to make up my mind on if I wanted to do this and if I should do this. I shared it with two friends, and their feedback, A, was, wow, is that true? Like, is that real? And I said, yeah, that's a true story. Like, that is this serious situation that is real. And B, they said, wow, I would never do anything like that. So you're crazy. And when I got that feedback, it almost confirmed that I should do it. I've made a habit out of not doing what most people would do. And I kind of intentionally try to do the opposite of what most people do. And maybe that's what got me in this situation, but I kind of stick by it. And there's this pig-headedness in me that is a big part of the reason that I was successful the first time around. I just thought to myself, I like a good challenge, and I just decided to publish it, just decided to post it. So on December 27th, 2023, I clicked publish on that video. I gave it a name, and I decided this is gonna be a series. It's a challenge that I'm pursuing, and I'm going to recap my income every single month and update my audience of over 200,000 people throughout the month and after the end of each month, giving the total numbers of the money that I was able to bring in and the updates on what was going on with my debt and how I was able to pay any of it off if I did in any given month. So I called it Project Resurgence. And the word resurgence is pretty important to me because I feel like it's very applicable to my entire life, but of course, the past several years. And the definition of resurgence is a rising again into life, activity, or prominence, an increase or revival after a period of little activity, popularity, or occurrence. So as you know, I had 2 years of depression and just feeling stuck. And I was ready to move on. I was ready for a resurgence of my own. Now, I have a lot to say on the topic of depression, but that's not the topic of today's video. So if you feel that that would be something that you'd find helpful, just leave a comment below and let me know, and maybe I'll cover that in a future video. Now, I'm no dummy. I knew that when I posted this, that it was gonna get a lot of attention. I was sure that there would be leverage or benefits that would come along with that, right? I'm a marketer. I knew that views and eyeballs can turn into opportunity. And I just wasn't sure what type of opportunity that would be, and I wasn't sure if the results of it would be good or bad or what was gonna happen. That was why it was so important for me to just take action and see where it led me. Now, this concept is not new, by the way. It's called building in public, and a lot of content creators and entrepreneurs have done this over the years, and it's becoming more popular. But most people do it differently than I did. Most people don't cover their finances, right? Most people don't like talking about money. A lot of the people that are building in public are building, software tools and documenting their brand and behind the scenes of launching their company and things like that. I wanted to put a different spin on things. So going into this building in public project, there were a few things that I knew I was planning on as far as like income generators. And the first one was brand partnerships. So before 2024 even started, I had a list of businesses and brands that aligned with the problem that I was solving. So I knew that by documenting this financial issue, that financial brands would probably be interested in tying their brand name to my story and be involved in my content in some capacity. So starting the year, I was already able to lock in brand partnerships, and I was able to tack on $15,000 to my total annual income by the end of 2024, just in brand partnerships alone. Now, the bulk of the project was to restore my marketing agency income that I had lost from the past 2 years with clients canceling and me just not paying attention to things. Now, as somebody who has almost a decade of experience in marketing, I also knew there would be ways for me to earn additional income through my content creation and through affiliate commissions and referring softwares and tools to other people. And those ended up being the primary sources of income throughout the year. Now, I knew that there was a lot more that was not financial that I would gain from this project. And the biggest one, of course, was simply getting my finances in order. That was really what mattered, and it was the whole reason I was doing this. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I would have gotten 1 million followers from doing this. The main reason was to fix my financial situation. I was genuinely doing this for me and me only, and posting it publicly was just a way to force me to follow through and actually do the thing that I said I was going to do. As a subsequent benefit of that, it also forced me to be consistent in my content creation. For whatever reason, when it comes to like my own stuff, my own creativity and blogging and vlogging and my own website and content, I've never really like gone all in on it. And even in this moment as we speak, this is part of that process of really, taking the gloves off and just going all in and doing the thing that I've said that I was going to do for years. This financial challenge, this whole Project Resurgence thing, forced me to do that. It made it so that I actually did start creating content and documenting and vlogging and speaking to camera more and really getting out of my comfort zone. And that was a really wonderful kind of surprising benefit of all of this, because in the beginning, the stress kind of blinded that would become part of this journey in such a strong way. Now, the most beneficial part of this was not even financial. It was really just a very deep dive into self-discovery, to be totally honest. Finding myself and learning more about myself and getting to know myself. The real you comes out when you are in the face of adversity, when you're dealing with things that are insanely difficult. There were times throughout the year where I didn't know what to do. I really didn't. I was getting letters talking about my house being put on a lien and my bank account was frozen, and we'll talk about that. But along the way, I met a woman, her name is Anna Bruno, and she reached out to me from discovering my story. She said, "Hey, I'm a financial advisor and I would like to help you." She selflessly helped me all throughout the year. This isn't, she's not an endorsement of this video. She doesn't even know that I'm mentioning this, but I will put her information in the description of this video below because she did a lot for me. And she even helped me negotiate with the IRS and was one of the big reasons that I actually didn't have to pay any taxes in 2023 because of how crappy of a year that I had. So that's just given my own personal circumstances. Luckily, my profit and my actual income was so low that I didn't owe any taxes, and she was able to help me navigate that and eventually get on a payment plan with the IRS, which really saved me from everything falling apart. Yeah, so just a huge thank you to her. It was wonderful getting to know her and sharing my story with her. There's not a lot of people who would have helped me in the way that she did. So I feel very obligated to mention her. It essentially is broken down like this. You have a profit jar, which is going to be 5 to 10% of your total revenue. You have an owner's pay jar, which is 35 to 50% of your revenue, just depending on what type of business you run. You have a tax jar, which is 15% of your overall revenue.